Daddy, my teacher is an angel. Haejun had never talked so much about anyone. Jae-sung Kim controlled an empire worth millions, commanded loyalty through fear and respect, but his 5-year-old son's innocent words left him curious in a way he hadn't felt in years. Westwood Academy was the safest school in Beverly Hills, meticulously maintained Japanese gardens, discreet but efficient security, clientele that included children of senators, Fortune 500 CEOs, and Hollywood royalty, perfect for the air of an organization that preferred to remain in the shadows. But nothing could have prepared him for Amelin Jackson. She was kneeling beside Haejun on the playground, carefully cleaning a scraped knee with the tenderness that only a true mother possesses, curly hair framing a face that radiated calm, gentle hands that made his son laugh even through tears. "It's okay, sweetheart," she murmured, and Jae-sung felt something crack inside his chest. 3 years. 3 years since someone had cared for Haejun with genuine maternal love. 3 years since he'd seen his son completely relax in a woman's arms. "Mr. Kim," Amelin stood up, and when their eyes met, the world stopped. It wasn't just her beauty, it was the way she held Haejun, as if protecting him was instinct, not obligation. "Thank you," he managed to say, his voice rougher than intended. "He's special," she smiled, and Jae-sung saw something broken in her eyes, a familiar pain that mirrored his own. In that moment, Jae-sung Kim, a man who never hesitated, who calculated every move, knew his life had just changed forever. And for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't afraid of change. What he didn't know was that 2,000 miles away, elder Kim Sang-min had just received a photo that would make him declare war against the woman his grandson called an angel. Before we dive into this emotional journey, please hit that like button. If you're excited for this story, subscribe to our channel to support our work and stay until the end. Comment below what you thought of this story and what we can improve for future episodes. Your feedback means everything to us 3 weeks earlier. The mahogany-paneled conference room at Westwood Academy buzzed with the controlled chaos of wealthy parents discussing their children's futures. Margaret Whitfield, the Academy's seasoned director, stood at the head of the room with the poise of someone who'd spent decades managing America's elite. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet our newest faculty member, Miss Amelin Jackson. She'll be teaching our special education program." Amelin rose from her seat near the back, her natural beauty immediately drawing attention. At 26, she possessed an ethereal quality that made heads turn, not just because of her stunning features, but because of the quiet strength that radiated from her every movement. Her hair fell in perfect curls around her shoulders, and her simple but elegant dress spoke of someone who understood style without needing to flaunt wealth. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitfield. I'm honored to be here." Her voice carried a slight nervousness that made her seem more human than the polished perfection surrounding her. "I believe every child has unlimited potential, regardless of their challenges. My job isn't to fix them, it's to help them discover their own unique brilliance." Richard Blackwood III leaned back in his chair, his cold blue eyes assessing Amelin with the calculating gaze of old money examining new territory. "Miss Jackson, what exactly qualifies you to work with our exceptional children? Westwood Academy has very particular standards." The room fell silent. Several parents shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the loaded question for what it was. Amelin's spine straightened, but her smile never wavered. "I have a master's in special education from UCLA, 5 years of experience working with children who have diverse learning needs, and I've spent the last 2 years volunteering with children who've experienced trauma. Most importantly, I understand what it feels like to be different, to feel like you don't quite fit in the world around you." Rebecca Becker Foster, a veteran teacher in her mid-40s with kind eyes and graying brown hair, nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what we need here, someone who sees potential instead of problems." The conference room door opened, and conversations didn't exactly stop, but they became more careful, more measured. Even in a room full of powerful people, the man who entered commanded a different kind of attention. Jae-sung Kim was devastatingly handsome in the way that made women forget their own names. Sharp jawline, intelligent dark eyes, and the kind of presence that suggested danger wrapped in expensive Italian silk. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored. his black hair styled with casual precision, and when he moved, it was with the fluid grace of a predator who knew he owned whatever room he entered. "Mr. Kim," Margaret's voice held a note of relief. Jae-sung's donations to the academy were substantial, and his son was one of their most promising students. "So glad you could join us." Jae-sung's eyes swept the room and landed on Amelin. For a moment that felt like eternity, they simply looked at each other. She felt her breath catch, not just because he was impossibly attractive, but because she saw something unexpected in his gaze. Vulnerability, pain, the same hollow ache she carried every day. "My apologies for being late. Business ran longer than expected." His voice was deep, controlled, with just a hint of an accent that made certain words sound like music. He took the empty seat directly across from Amelin, and she found herself hyper-aware of his presence. The way he listened intently when she spoke about her teaching philosophy. How his eyes softened when she mentioned working with children who felt different or misunderstood. "Miss Jackson," Jae-sung's voice cut through Richard's continued questioning about appropriate backgrounds. "Kaisways, my son speaks of you constantly. He says you make learning feel like magic." Amelin's face lit up with genuine joy. "Hae-jun is extraordinary. He has this incredible way of seeing the world, like he notices beauty that adults miss. Yesterday, he spent 20 minutes watching a butterfly in the garden, and then wrote a story about how it was delivering messages between flowers." Something shifted in Jae-sung's expression, a crack in the armor that revealed the devoted father beneath the dangerous exterior. His mother used to tell him stories like that. She believed everything in nature had a purpose, a story to tell. The past tense hung in the air like a weight. Amelin's heart clenched with recognition. She knew that particular pain, the way grief could sneak up and steal your breath in the middle of ordinary moments. "She sounds like she was wonderful," Amelin said softly, and the genuine compassion in her voice made Jae-sung's chest tighten. As the meeting concluded, Richard made a point of approaching Margaret. "I hope we're being thorough with our background checks. Westwood Academy's reputation depends on maintaining certain standards." Jae-sung's eyes darkened, and for a moment, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Richard, despite his arrogance, was smart enough to recognize real danger when he saw it. He quickly excused himself. "Miss Jackson," Jae-sung approached her as she gathered her materials. "Would you have time for coffee? I'd like to hear more about Hae-jun's progress." Amelin looked up at him, seeing past the intimidating exterior to the concerned father underneath. "I'd like that very much." The small cafe near Westwood Academy felt like a world away from the school's polished perfection. Amelin sat across from Jae-sung in a corner booth, steam rising from their coffee cups, as they talked with the intensity of people who'd been waiting their whole lives to be understood. "He draws pictures of her sometimes," Jae-sung said quietly, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "My wife, Min-hee. He doesn't remember her face clearly anymore, but he draws these beautiful women with long dark hair, always smiling, always reaching toward him." Amelin's heart clenched. How old was he when she passed? 2. Ovarian cancer. The doctors said she had 6 months, but she fought for 8 because she couldn't bear to leave him. The pain in his voice was raw, unguarded. "I've tried to be enough for him, but there are things, maternal things, that I can't give him." "You're a wonderful father, Jae-sung. The way Hae-jun talks about you, the light in his eyes when he sees you, that's pure love." Something shifted in Jae-sung's expression when she used his first name. In his world, few people dared such familiarity, but from her lips it sounded like a prayer. "What about you? Do you have children?" The question hit like a physical blow. Amelin's composure cracked for just a moment before she rebuilt her walls. "No, I can't have children." The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared pain. Jae-sung reached across the table, his hand covering hers with surprising gentleness for someone with such dangerous hands. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "It's okay." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Endometriosis, stage 4. The doctors told me when I was 22 that pregnancy would be unlikely. Impossible, really. They offered surgery, but the success rate was so low, and the recovery." She took a shaky breath. "I chose to focus on what I could control, my education, My career, helping other people's children? Is that why you teach? A sad smile played at her lips. I love children. Being around them, watching them discover the world, helping them grow. It's the closest I'll ever get to being a mother. Some days that's enough. Other days, it breaks your heart. Yes, Jun adores you. Yesterday he asked if angels could be teachers. When I asked why, he said because you make him feel safe the way his mommy used to. Tears gathered in Amelin's eyes. He's an amazing little boy. So smart, so kind. Sometimes when I'm helping him with his reading and he looks up at me with those big eyes, I pretend just for a moment that he's mine. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. Jae-sung's thumb brushed across her knuckles, and she didn't pull away. Maybe he could be, he whispered, the words escaping before he could stop them. Their eyes met across the small table, and the world outside the cafe ceased to exist. In that moment, they weren't a crime boss and a teacher. They were two broken people who'd found something whole in each other. The spell was broken by Jae-sung's phone buzzing. Danny Chen's name flashed on the screen. I have to take this, Jae-sung apologized, stepping outside. Boss, we have a problem. Danny's voice was tight with concern. The Korean-American had been Jae-sung's right hand for 8 years, and his loyalty was absolute. Someone's been asking questions about the teacher, professional questions. Jae-sung's blood turned to ice. What kind of questions? Background, family, daily routines, financial records. I traced it back to a private investigator working for your grandfather. Elder Kim Sang-min hadn't spoken to him in 2 years, not since Jae-sung had refused to remarry the daughter of another crime family to strengthen their alliance. How much does he know? Everything, boss. Photos, her address, where she shops, her grandmother's medical bills, even her college transcripts. Grandmother? Pearl Louise Johnson, 73, diabetes and heart condition, lives in a senior facility in Koreatown. Miss Jackson visits every Sunday, pays all the medical expenses out of pocket. Jae-sung closed his eyes. His grandfather was a master strategist who never made threats. He simply eliminated obstacles. If he saw Ameline as a threat to the family legacy. Double her security, discreet but constant. And Danny? Yes, boss. I need you to do something for me, something personal. When Jae-sung returned to the table, Ameline could see the change in his demeanor. The vulnerable man had been replaced by someone harder, more guarded. Is everything okay? Business complications. Nothing you need to worry about. But Ameline had grown up in neighborhoods where danger wore expensive suits and spoke in careful euphemisms. She recognized the signs. Jae-sung, what exactly do you do for work? The question he'd been dreading. He could lie. He was good at it. Had built an empire on carefully crafted deceptions. But looking into her honest eyes, he found he couldn't. Import and export. International business. My family has been in it for generations. Not a lie, exactly, but not the whole truth. Ameline studied his face, seeing the walls going back up, and made a decision that would change everything. I don't care. What? Whatever it is you're not telling me, whatever danger you think you bring, I don't care. Haejun needs me, and She took a shaky breath. I need him. I need both of you. Jae-sung stared at her, this incredible woman who was choosing him without even knowing what she was choosing. The smart thing would be to walk away, to protect her from the darkness that followed him everywhere. Instead, he leaned across the table and kissed her. It was soft, tentative, full of 3 years of loneliness and a lifetime of wanting something he'd never thought he could have. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Come home with me, he whispered. Let me cook for you. Let Haejun show you his drawings. Let us be a family, even if it's just for one night. That evening, in a modest but comfortable house in the Hollywood Hills, Ameline sat on the living room floor with Haejun, helping him build an elaborate castle out of blocks, while Jae-sung cooked Korean barbecue in the kitchen. The house was nothing like what she'd expected. Instead of cold luxury, it was warm and lived in. Family photos covered the mantelpiece, mostly of Jae-sung and Haejun, but a few included a beautiful Korean woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. That's my mommy, Haejun said, following her gaze. She went to heaven when I was little, but Daddy says she watches over us. She's beautiful. You have her smile. Daddy says I have her heart too. She used to help sick people get better. She was a doctor. A nurse. Daddy met her at the hospital when his friend got hurt. He says it was love at first sight. Amelin felt a pang of something, not jealousy exactly, but a deep sadness for the woman who'd never see her son grow up, and for the man who'd lost his soulmate so young. "Miss Amelin, are you going to be my new mommy?" Haejun asked with the devastating directness of a 5-year-old. Amelin's breath caught. "Would you like that, sweetheart?" "Yes." Daddy smiles now when he talks about you. He didn't smile for a long time after Mommy went to heaven. And you smell like flowers and give the best hugs. From the kitchen, Jae-sung listened to his son's innocent words and felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. When he joined them for dinner, watching Amelin cut Haejun's meat and wipe his face with maternal instinct, he knew he was lost. "Tell me about your family," he said, as they cleaned up together, Haejun playing quietly in the living room. "Not much to tell. My parents died in a car accident when I was 16. My grandmother raised me after that." Amelin's voice was matter-of-fact, but Jae-sung heard the old pain underneath. "Pearl Louise Johnson, strongest woman I've ever known. She worked 3 jobs to put me through college, never complained, never made me feel like a burden." She sounds incredible. She is. She's in assisted living now. Diabetes, heart problems. The medical bills are... Amelin shrugged. "That's why I took the job at Westwood. It pays 3 times what public schools pay. Money shouldn't be an issue for medical care. Easy to say when you have it." There was no bitterness in her voice, just resignation. "I've learned to manage." Jae-sung made a mental note to have Danny look into Pearl Louise's medical situation. Quietly, anonymously, but thoroughly. Later, after Haejun had fallen asleep between them during a movie, Amelin looked at the peaceful scene and whispered, "I could get used to this." "So could I," Jae-sung replied, pulling her closer. "So could I." But even as he said the words, his phone was buzzing with messages that would make their newfound happiness impossible to maintain. 2 months later. The relationship between Jae-sung and Amelin had blossomed slowly, carefully, like a flower growing in hostile soil. They'd learned each other's rhythms, how she hummed when she was content, how his shoulders tensed when business calls came at night. Haejun had begun calling her Miss Amelin Mommy, a title that made her cry happy tears every time she heard it. But Amelin wasn't naive. She'd grown up in neighborhoods where power had many faces, and she recognized the signs of danger gathering around them. The black cars that seemed to follow her to work, the way conversations stopped when she entered certain rooms, the tension in Jae-sung's shoulders when his phone rang late at night. "We need to talk," she said one evening after Haejun had gone to bed. They were sitting on the couch, her head on his shoulder, his fingers playing with her curls. "About what?" "About whatever it is you're protecting me from. About why Danny checks my car every morning before I leave for work. About why you have security cameras I'm not supposed to notice." Jae-sung sighed, knowing this conversation was inevitable. "My family, my business. It's complicated." "Stop saying that. I'm not a child, Jae-sung. I know you're involved in something dangerous, and I know your family doesn't approve of me. What I don't know is whether you trust me enough to tell me the truth." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of generations. "My family has been in the import and export for over 200 years. We started in Korea, expanded to Japan, China, eventually America. We move things that other people can't or won't move. We solve problems that conventional businesses can't solve. You're talking about crime. I'm talking about survival, about building something that lasts, that provides for future generations, that commands respect in a world that gives respect to no one." Amelin sat up, studying his face. "And your grandfather doesn't think I fit into that world." "My grandfather thinks you're a threat to everything our family has built. He believes in pure bloodlines, traditional marriages, alliances that strengthen our position." "And what do you believe?" Jae-sung cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. "I believe that I was dead inside for 3 years until I met you. I believe that Haejun is happier than he's been since his mother died. I believe that love is stronger than tradition, and that the future matters more than the past." Even if it costs you your family? You and Hei-jun are my family now. The conviction in his voice made her heart soar and break simultaneously. She knew what he was risking for her, what he was willing to sacrifice. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something I need you to know about me." "What?" "I'm not just some teacher who happened to fall into your life. My grandmother. She's in an expensive care facility. Her medical bills are enormous and my teacher's salary barely covers them. I took the job at Westwood because it pays 3 times what public schools pay." She took a shaky breath. "I need this job, Jae-sung. I need the money, the insurance, the stability. If your family's disapproval costs me my position, it won't. I won't let it. You can't promise that. Men like your grandfather don't make idle threats, and women like me don't usually win wars against family empires." Jae-sung pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. "Then we'll have to make sure it doesn't come to war." But even as he said the words, his phone was buzzing with a message that would make war inevitable. The text was simple, in Korean. "The dragon's heart waits for a worthy heir. Prove yourself or watch another claim what should be yours." Attached was a photo of the jade pendant that represented everything Jae-sung had been raised to value, everything he'd been taught to want, and a second photo of Amelin leaving the school, unaware of the crosshairs centered on her back. Meanwhile, 200 miles away in Seoul, elder Kim Sang-min sat in his study, surrounded by 2 centuries of family history. At 78, he remained sharp as a blade, his mind as dangerous as any weapon in his considerable arsenal. The photographs spread across his desk told a story that made his blood boil with ancestral rage. His grandson, heir to the Kim legacy, future leader of their empire, laughing with a black woman, kissing her, playing house with her and his great-grandson as if bloodlines and honor meant nothing. "Foolish boy," he muttered in Korean, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "He forgets who he is, what he owes to those who came before." Kim Dong-woo, the family's chief enforcer and Sang-min's most trusted advisor, stood respectfully nearby. "Perhaps we should speak with Jae-sung directly, grandfather. Explain our concerns." "Concerns?" Sang-min's voice cracked like a whip. "This is not a concern. It is a catastrophe. The Kim bloodline has remained pure for 8 generations. Our strength comes from our unity, our traditions, our understanding of who we are and where we belong." He picked up a photograph of Amelin helping Hei-jun with his homework, her natural beauty evident even in the grainy surveillance image. "She is beautiful, I will grant that, but beauty fades. Bloodlines are forever. That boy carries the future of our family in his veins, and I will not allow it to be diluted by sentiment." Dong-woo shifted uncomfortably. He'd watched Jae-sung grow from a rebellious teenager into a formidable leader, and he'd seen the devastating effect his wife's death had on both father and son. If this woman brought them happiness. "Jae-sung has been alone for 3 years, grandfather. Perhaps—" "Alone?" Sang-min's laugh was bitter. "He has his son, his family, his responsibilities. What more does a man need?" The elder reached into his jacket and withdrew an object that made Dong-woo's breath catch. An ancient jade pendant carved in the shape of a dragon, its emerald surface gleaming with an inner fire that spoke of centuries of careful preservation. "The dragon's heart," Sang-min said reverently, "worn by the head of our family for 200 years. My grandfather wore it when he built our first empire. My father wore it when he expanded our reach across Asia. I wore it when I brought us to America." The pendant was more than jewelry. It was a symbol of absolute authority, a tangible connection to their ancestors and, according to family legend, the source of their continued prosperity and power. Jae-sung should have received this when he turned 35, but I held it back, waiting for him to prove himself worthy. Now I see I was right to wait. "What do you want me to do?" "Contact our people in Los Angeles. I want the woman gone, not killed. That would make her a martyr in my grandson's eyes, discredited, destroyed. Make her disappear from his life voluntarily. And if she refuses—" Sang-min's smile was colder than a Seoul winter. "Then we remind her that some choices have consequences that extend far beyond the person making them." 1 month later. The autumn evening cast long shadows across Westwood Academy's parking lot as Amelin gathered her materials from the parent-teacher conference that had run later than expected. At 6:15 p.m., the usually bustling campus felt eerily quiet, with only a few scattered cars remaining under the amber glow of security lights. She'd stayed behind to discuss Hae-jun's exceptional progress with Margaret Whitfield and Rebecca Foster. The little boy was reading at a third-grade level despite being only 5, and his emotional intelligence was remarkable for his age. What they didn't discuss, but all 3 women understood, was how much of his recent growth stemmed from having a maternal figure in his life again. Walking alone toward her Honda Civic, Amelin felt the familiar mixture of exhaustion and contentment that came from a day well spent. Her relationship with Jae-sung had deepened over the past 3 months, built on shared meals, quiet conversations, and the gradual trust that comes from 2 wounded people learning to heal together. The attack came without warning. She was fumbling with her keys, thinking about the Korean phrases Jae-sung had been teaching her, when strong hands grabbed her from behind. Her scream was muffled by a cloth pressed against her mouth. Not chloroform, but something that made her thoughts fuzzy and her limbs heavy. "Don't fight and you won't get hurt," a voice said in accented English. Miguel Shadow Herrera was a professional who took no pleasure in violence against women, but business was business, and the old Korean man was paying him enough to retire. Amelin's teacher training kicked in. She'd taken self-defense courses, knew to go for eyes and groin, to make noise, to fight dirty. But the drug was working fast, and there were 3 of them. Her vision blurred as they half-carried, half-dragged her toward a black SUV with tinted windows. "Please," she managed to whisper as they shoved her into the back seat. "I have students who need me. My grandmother." "Your grandmother will be fine as long as you cooperate," Miguel said. And the casual mention of Pearl Louise made Amelin's blood turn to ice. These people knew about her family. They'd been watching, planning. The last thing she saw before the hood went over her head was Jessica Taylor walking toward her own car, too far away to help, too focused on her phone to notice the abduction happening in the shadows. The abandoned warehouse in the industrial district of downtown LA smelled of rust, motor oil, and decades of neglect. Amelin came to consciousness slowly, her head pounding and her mouth dry as cotton. She was tied to a metal chair with zip ties that cut into her wrists when she moved. "You're awake, good." Miguel stepped into the light, and Amelin got her first clear look at her captor. He was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 5'8", with the kind of lean build that spoke of speed over strength. His face was unremarkable except for his eyes, flat, professional, empty of emotion. "What do you want?" "Nothing from you directly. You're just leverage." He pulled out a cell phone and held it toward her. "You're going to call your boyfriend and deliver a message." "I don't know what you're talking about." Miguel's laugh was genuinely amused. "Miss Jackson, please don't insult my intelligence. Jae-sung Kim, Korean Mafia boss, your lover, father of the little boy you've been playing house with. We know everything about your little romance." He scrolled through photos on his phone, images of her and Jae-sung at the cafe, walking hand-in-hand through the park with Hae-jun, sharing quiet moments on his couch. The invasion of privacy was almost as violating as the kidnapping itself. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call him and tell him that we want the dragon's heart. The jade pendant his family has been hoarding for 2 centuries. He brings it here alone. And you get to go home to your grandmother and your students. I don't know anything about a pendant. You don't need to. He'll know exactly what we're talking about." Miguel's expression darkened. "But let me be very clear about something, Miss Jackson. This isn't a negotiation. Your boyfriend has 2 hours to bring us that pendant or you disappear forever." Miguel held out the phone. "Make the call." Jae-sung was in his study, reviewing shipping manifests with Danny Chen when his phone rang. Amelin's name on the caller ID made him smile. She usually called around this time to tell him about her day and say goodnight to Hae-jun. "Hey, beautiful. How was the parent conference?" "Jae-sung." Her voice was wrong, strained, frightened, carefully controlled. Every instinct he'd developed in 20 years of dangerous living screamed alarm. "Amelin, what's wrong?" "They want the dragon's heart, the jade pendant from your family. You have 2 hours to bring it to." Her voice broke slightly. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Where are you? Are you hurt?" "Warehouse district near the rail yards. Come alone or they'll—" The line went dead. Jae-sung stared at the phone, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. Danny was already moving, pulling up tracking software, checking security feeds, mobilizing their network of informants. "Boss, we can have 20 men there in 30 minutes. Full tactical gear, multiple entry points." "No." Jae-sung's voice was deadly calm. "They said alone, and they have Amelin. I won't risk her life. The dragon's heart, boss. That's not just valuable, it's a piece of jade." Jae-sung was already moving toward the safe hidden behind a false wall in his study. "Amelin is irreplaceable." The pendant sat in its silk-lined box like a piece of captured starlight. Even in the dim light of the safe, its emerald surface seemed to glow with inner fire. Jae-sung had coveted this pendant his entire life, had been raised to believe that wearing it would make him the true head of the Kim family. Now, holding it in his palm, he realized it was just a beautiful rock. Amelin was flesh and blood and love and laughter. She was Hae-jun's bedtime stories and his own reason for waking up in the morning. She was the future he'd never dared to dream of. "Danny, I need you to do something for me. Anything, boss. If this goes wrong, if something happens to me, I need you to take care of them. Amelin and Hae-jun. Make sure they're safe. Make sure they're provided for. Promise me." Danny's throat tightened. In 8 years of working for Jae-sung, he'd never heard his boss sound so human. "Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me." "I promise." The warehouse district at night was a maze of shadows and industrial decay. Jae-sung parked his car where instructed and walked toward the specified building, every sense alert for danger. He'd come alone as ordered, but that didn't mean he was unprepared. The warehouse door was slightly ajar, spilling a thin line of light into the darkness. Jae-sung pushed it open and stepped inside, his hand resting casually near the gun concealed beneath his jacket. "Mr. Kim, right on time." Miguel emerged from behind a shipping container, and Jae-sung immediately catalogued everything about him: height, weight, stance, the way he held his weapon. Professional, experienced, but not Korean. This wasn't family business. "Where is she?" "Safe. For now." Miguel gestured toward the back of the warehouse, the pendant first. Jae-sung pulled the dragon's heart from his pocket, and even in the harsh warehouse lighting, its beauty was undeniable. Miguel's eyes widened slightly. He'd been told it was valuable, but seeing it in person was different. 200 years of family history, Jae-sung said quietly. "My grandfather would kill me for this." "Your grandfather is the one who wants it back." The words hit like a physical blow. Jae-sung's mind reeled as the pieces fell into place. The professional operation, the knowledge of family history, the specific demand for the pendant rather than money. "Sang-min hired you." "Smart man." "Yes, your grandfather wants his family heirloom returned, and he wants the distraction removed from your life." The deal was the pendant for her safety. Miguel's smile was cold. "The deal was whatever your grandfather wanted it to be. He's paying me enough to retire, Mr. Kim. That kind of money buys absolute loyalty. Let me see her, let me know she's alive." Miguel nodded to someone in the shadows, and 2 men dragged Amelin into the light. She was conscious but clearly drugged, her beautiful face pale and frightened. When she saw Jae-sung, tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, love. Everything's going to be okay." Jae-sung tossed the pendant to Miguel, who caught it with practiced ease. "There. You have what you want. Let her go." "I'm afraid it's not that simple." Miguel pocketed the pendant and raised his gun. "Your grandfather was very specific about the terms. The pendant comes home and the problem gets permanently solved." "You said you wouldn't kill her." "I lied." The gunshot was deafeningly loud in the enclosed space, but instead of Amelin crying out in pain, it was Miguel who staggered backward, clutching his shoulder as blood seeped between his fingers. Danny Chen emerged from behind another container, smoking gun in his hand and a grim smile on his face. "Sorry, boss. I know you said come alone, but I've never been good at following orders." "Danny, get Amelin out of here." But Miguel, even wounded, was still dangerous. He swung his gun toward Amelin, and Jae-sung didn't think. He just moved. The bullet meant for the woman he loved tore through his shoulder instead, spinning him around and sending him crashing into a stack of metal crates. Pain exploded through his body, but all he could think about was making sure Amelin was safe. "Jae-sung!" Her scream cut through the chaos as Danny and Miguel's remaining men exchanged gunfire in the shadows of the warehouse. The last thing Jae-sung saw before darkness claimed him was Ameline breaking free from her restraints and crawling toward him, her hands pressing against his wound, her voice calling his name like a prayer. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please stay with me." Then the sirens began to wail in the distance, and everything went black, 3 months later. The morning sun streamed through the windows of their bedroom, casting golden patterns across the walls. Jae-sung drifted back to consciousness slowly, awareness returning in the gentle way of someone who felt completely safe. His shoulder had healed well, leaving only a small scar that Ameline liked to trace with her fingertips when she thought he was sleeping. The first thing he noticed was the weight against his chest, Ameline's head resting over his heart, her curly hair spread across his skin like silk. The second thing he noticed was the cool touch of metal against his collarbone. The dragon's heart pendant lay against his chest, its jade surface catching the morning light and throwing tiny rainbows across the ceiling. "You're awake," Ameline murmured without lifting her head, her voice still husky with sleep. "How did you know?" "Your heartbeat changed." She pressed a soft kiss to his chest right over the scar. "You always wake up the same way, slow, then all at once, like you're checking to make sure everything is still real." "Is it? Real?" She lifted her head to look at him, and the love in her eyes was so profound it still took his breath away, even after months of waking up beside her. "Very real." His fingers found the pendant and he lifted it slightly, watching the jade catch the light. "How?" he asked quietly. "The FBI had it as evidence." "How did you—" Ameline's smile was mysterious, tinged with the satisfaction of a woman who'd pulled off the impossible. "Let's just say I have some very good friends in law enforcement." "What friends?" "My cousin Marcus is a federal prosecutor. My college roommate Sarah works for the State Department's Cultural Heritage Division, and my grandmother's church friend Dolores. Her son is Detective Rodriguez with the LAPD's art theft unit." Jae-sung stared at her, pieces clicking into place. "You've been planning this for months. Since the night you got shot, I saw what giving up this pendant meant to you, what it cost you to choose me over your family legacy. So I decided to get it back." She sat up, the sheet pooling around her waist, her hair catching the morning light like a halo. It took some doing. The pendant was technically stolen property, but it was also a family heirloom taken under duress. Marcus helped me file the right paperwork. Sarah pulled some strings with international cultural heritage laws, and Detective Rodriguez made sure it was classified as recovered stolen goods rather than evidence in an ongoing case. The legal fees alone must have been covered. Turns out when you save a federal prosecutor's cousin from kidnappers, he's very motivated to help with paperwork. "Ameline, you gave up everything for me, Jae-sung. Your family, your position, your heritage. The least I could do was give you back the one piece that actually mattered." Jae-sung pulled her down for a kiss that tasted like forever and felt like coming home. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you so much, I don't have words for it. Show me instead." Later, as they lay tangled in the sheets, Ameline traced the dragon carved into the jade with one finger. "Tell me about it. The real story, not the legend." Jae-sung was quiet for a moment, gathering memories that went back generations. "My great-great-grandfather was a poor fisherman in Busan. One day, he pulled up his nets and found this pendant caught in the mesh. The local shaman said it was a sign that the dragon spirit had chosen him to build something lasting. And did he? He started with one fishing boat, then 2, then a fleet. By the time he died, he owned half the harbor. But the pendant, he never sold it, never traded it, never used it as collateral. He said it wasn't about the money. It was about remembering where you came from while building where you're going. And now?" Jae-sung lifted the pendant, studying the intricate carving that had been passed down through 5 generations of Kim men. "Now I think he'd be proud. His great-great-grandson is building something new, something legitimate, something our children can be proud of." "Our children?" The words slipped out before he could stop them, and Ameline went very still. They talked about marriage, about building a life together, but children, that was complicated territory for a woman who couldn't conceive. "I meant Haijun," he said quickly. "And maybe adoption? Foster care? There are so many kids who need families, and you're such a natural mother." Ameline's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears. You'd want that? To adopt? I'd want anything that makes you happy, anything that makes us a family. She kissed him again, pouring months of love and gratitude and hope into the connection between them. I love you, Jae-sung Kim. I love our life, our family, our completely impossible love story. Even the dangerous parts? Especially the dangerous parts. They make the peaceful moments feel like miracles. A knock on the bedroom door interrupted them, followed by Hae-jun's voice calling out in the careful tone of a child who'd been taught to respect closed doors. Daddy? Miss Ameline? Can I come in? I made breakfast. Jae-sung and Ameline looked at each other and burst into laughter. Their 6-year-old son, because that's what Hae-jun had become, officially and completely through adoption papers signed just last month, had been experimenting with cooking lately, with results that ranged from adorable to mildly catastrophic. Just a minute, sweetheart, Ameline called back, scrambling for a robe. We'll be right there. As they got dressed, Jae-sung caught sight of himself in the mirror, the pendant resting against his chest. Ameline moving around their bedroom with the comfortable familiarity of someone who belonged there completely. Morning light painting everything golden and perfect. You know what the best part is? He said, watching her brush her hair. What? My great-great-grandfather's pendant brought him prosperity and power, but it brought me something better. What's that? Home. They walked downstairs together to find Hae-jun in the kitchen, wearing an apron that was too big for him, and beaming with pride over a plate of slightly burned pancakes shaped like hearts. I made them special, he announced, because today is special. Why is today special? Ameline asked, ruffling his hair. Because we're a family, and families make every day special. Jae-sung looked around their kitchen, at his son's proud face, at Ameline's radiant smile, at the life they'd built from love and determination and the kind of courage that chooses hope over fear. The dragon's heart pendant rested warm against his chest, but the real treasure was sitting at their breakfast table, arguing about whether heart-shaped pancakes tasted better than regular ones. You're right, buddy, Jae-sung said, pulling both his loves into a hug that felt like a promise. Every day is special when you're home. Outside, Los Angeles woke up to another perfect morning, and in a house in the Hollywood Hills, a family that had been broken and lost and afraid discovered that love really could conquer everything, even traditions, even danger, even the impossible, especially the impossible.